Here we are, back in the bunker again, Tone. Good to see you virtually as always. We haven't
You,
caught up in
Paul.
a few days, which is good. As you can see, I'm still in self-quarantine here in New York in my home office, going on week 8, I think, in the United States, in New York. I'm catching the fluorescent rays from the lighting in my office, so I'm
Mm,
that in my,
mm.
olive oil skin helps a lot. um, but I understand that you're now you're actually on location, self quarantining, in
Yeah.
an undisclosed location for a client matter. And as far as I know, at not just Alvarez and Marsal, but also at as far as anyone I know, even in the market in the U.S. and Europe, I don't know anyone who's traveling for client cases. So I have a whole bunch of questions, and I'd love to
Yeah.
get some firsthand perspective. What it was like, kind of that first flight post pandemic. How did it feel? What precautions did you take? Because I know at A&M, we're obviously taking the health precautions very, very seriously for the firm and
Yeah.
for our people. All of our offices around the world are still closed, and we're working on how to appropriately open them up to make sure we keep people safe. But this sounds like something that you're working on is pretty critical. And I understand you're in a hotel, so let me hear what it was like, that first
Let's
trip
unpack
for a
this.
client.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
unpack this. Well, first off, it was it was a decision to come out here, and my dad actually was asking me, why are you having to do this? Well, it's too early. No one's yet opened up the skies to allow you to travel. It's still not completely safe, and we're able to do lots with Microsoft Teams, and you're making progress. Why don't you just keep making progress? And I said, look, it's in my judgment that I just need to be on the ground, that it's going to be meaningful for the case. It's a meaningful case. It's affecting a lot of people. And we thought through the safety issues and security issues, and thought we had worked it out, and planned it in the right way. Upon arriving, we got tested. Everybody got their temperature taken. The plane was fully disinfected, and we were wearing masks. We were wearing protective where we could. So we had thought it through. We already thought through a couple of weeks back now, how were we going to manage the overall re-entry into out of lockdown.
yep,
And from just stepping back from a firm perspective, we said obviously we have to follow the law in each of the countries. We operate in many different countries. They're all different laws. Even in the states, there's different state laws and different
yeah,
county regulations, and we need to follow that first. And then we're going to establish an A&M minimum that maybe higher than that across the world, and we will stick to that as a firm. We appreciate that we can't all accept. We can't all just think that we could just all work from home. So we have to allow and permit some things, but we're going to try to do so in a way that there are precautions being taken, and to the maximum extent, to the point that we're looking at heat sensors and thermometer sensors in the offices like Amazon has done. So, and investing in that. And then the third thing is we will really allow every local office manager or country head to make the call on the ground, because things are moving so fast. This virus could subside, it could increase again and bounce back. So we said, there's no better judgment on that than the individual on the ground. So we have 3 different levels of protocols in place, and then there's each case, each client job will have its own uniqueness, where it's
right.
traveling, how it needs to get there. And so we have those protocols in place. Yeah, this was not an easy decision.
But
my
now,
wife.
Tony, you just to be clear, you and the team are now in the middle of a 2-week self quarantine in a hotel in an undisclosed location. And once that runs out, you'll be going onto a client site. Is that right?
Correct. We'll
Wow.
start to be engaging in doing what we need to do locally. And I'll probably be here, 4 to 6 weeks. So it's not a small level of commitment to be away from your family. It'd be the longest period I've ever been away for a client, commitment. But it is,
Right.
one of those situations where it requires it. I talked to my family about it, obviously my wife, and she was very supportive, and we have that relationship. Maybe I end up flying them out here in a couple 3 weeks if I sense that the situation is here, that they lift the requirement to quarantine. It's just as easy to fly them out than me flying them. So, and we'll do that in a way that's obviously safe, and in the same way we flew out here. So,
but the case you're working on, I mean, obviously we're doing this in very limited situations. I mean, this is a pretty significant matter, many people involved. And I think, it's kind of cool. I mean, you're leading by example, right? That you as the leader of our European firm are doing this personally with the team. I mean, that goes right to what we say, our mantra is, kind of our mission is leadership, action, and results. And you're doing that. But to be clear, I think you have the only team doing that right now. There's not much of that going on. I know in the US, I haven't heard about it. It doesn't sound like there's a lot going on anywhere else in the world.
This is the first one out of Europe that's deploying. And I told the team, you don't need to go. I need to go. I need to be on the ground. But you don't need to be with me. So if it's a personal choice, I'm making a personal choice. So if you feel that you don't want to travel for any reason, if you're at a high risk out of this, then stay home. We're able to make progress, but I'll need to be on the ground.
Right.
And they all came and they all came and joined me. They wanted to be part of this and be out here. And thankfully, we made that decision. It's made a difference. It's made a difference in terms of case dynamics and how people appreciate that. I think that we're down here. So we'll see. A lot of work ahead of us, miles to go, as I say to my team, lots of miles to go. It's a long road, but important step that we're out here. And it's our own personal commitment that the work matters to us. This is our life and the life
now,
we have.
I have this question myself, and people are asking me, and I'd love to get your perspective now because you're doing it. So the first time you're staying in a hotel post-pandemic, what's it like? Did you sanitize? Did you wipe everything down yourself in the hotel? Are you comfortable that they cleaned it properly? What about the people that come in and service the room? I mean, how do you manage that? Because, I'm the opposite, right? I mean, I've traveled so much over the last 9 or 10 years, and now I'm home, right? And thinking about going back to doing what I used to do, 250,000 flight miles a year, staying at all these hotels. I think about all the things you touch in a hotel room. How are you managing that?
Yeah, we've had all the rooms cleaned and disinfected before we got in. Room service, they basically leave the plates outside. They knock on your door. They have gloves and masks on. They leave the plate. We wheel it in. When we're done, we wheel it back out. Normally, they clean the rooms once a week, and they come in and they're fully in. You feel like you're in a hospital ward. They're all decked out and cleaning. I've requested that they clean the rooms twice a week because I said I can't.
You're high maintenance.
I'm a neat freak. I'm so organized, and my notorious in my family to be very, very so I needed to have it clean. So we have that, but we're not allowed to leave.
But still, I mean, twice a week is not. I mean, normally it's every day, right? So you're not getting turned down service every night, essentially.
You're not getting turned down service every night. And then my mom gave me one of those blue ray antibacteria things. So I passed through all of the surfaces, and I brought some alcohol with me, so I cleaned all the surfaces, and you wash your hands and you disinfect, and you're generally very, very careful. But is there more risk that we're taking that we're here as opposed to being at home? Probably.
Are you leaving? Are you leaving the room at all to go jog or?
Not allowed.
So 2 weeks straight in a hotel room. Wow.
Yeah, we got tested. So maybe if the test, assuming the tests come out positive, we'll see if we'll be able to get special dispensation. But they're strict here. They're very, very strict. They take it very, very seriously, as many of the countries are. And so we're respecting it. We're respecting the regulations here, like we said. and we'll see what happens.
But I think that's, listen, I get so many questions, as I'm sure you do, is what makes a firm like A&M different than our competitors or other firms out there. I don't know anyone, or I don't know anyone doing it right now. I could be wrong because I don't know everything that's going on, but these are the type of things that we do for clients that I don't think many other firms or many other people would do, particularly at folks at your level. And I think that's what sets us apart. That's the culture that your father and Brian have set from the beginning, and that all of the leaders of the firm lead that by example. Now, it's easy for me to say as I sit here from the comfy confines of my home office while you're sitting in a hotel room, but I think that is pretty wild. And we do get, a lot of the questions we're getting is, and you touched on it, how we're going to open up as a firm, what does that look like? And, we don't know yet, right? I mean, I think, like you said, all the countries are different, all the states in the US are different. And then the other thing that happens, the local offices all have different situations, like in New York, for example, which is a hot spot. But, we're in a building with many other tenants. So we could do some of our own things, but what do the other tenants in the building do? And those are the type of things that are still being worked out. And I know at least in the US, and I think some parts of Europe are starting to slowly come back online. Even our firm in Asia is doing that. But, it's going to be a slow, gradual reopening till we get to some type of new normal. But I'm getting a lot of questions like that from the staff and the people. When do you think we're going to reopen? And, it's not really our decision per se at A&M. It's really up to the local governments and municipalities and when it comes to the health side of it. And then we'll kind of follow along because, like you said, we're going to take the health of the people, as top priority, health of the people and the clients.
You definitely try to do that and you put in place the policies. There's a bit of randomness in all this. I have friends that they didn't leave the house. They really were strict. And I was pretty strict. They were stricter than me, and they came down with the COVID.
Is that
virus.
right? Wow.
Yeah, and they, we can't figure out how they died, how it happened, because they were sequestered for 2 weeks. So it happened while they were in confinement, beyond two and a half, 2 weeks. So I presume it was in the place they were staying, or when they went down and went to the market to buy food. I mean, it's so almost random. And as you guys know, I've been running in the evenings in Paris because I need to out. This confinement for the 2 weeks is going to really be the toughest part of this whole deal.
Yeah, that's tough.
I'm used to just being active, and that was a risk that friends of mine wouldn't have taken of being. But I needed fresh air. I said, if I don't feel good about and where I am and I'll be stronger that way. And I feel that. I feel that I've been mentally and physically, I've just felt stronger because I was able to do that and breathe fresh air and be able to exercise.
Right.
And so here we've actually got a competition going where each night, all 5 of us that are here are keeping each other accountable, that we do 20 minutes of push-ups, 20 minutes of sit-ups. We're doing lunges and knee bends. And so we said we have to stay fit. We have to stay mentally and physically fit through this.
And that's the creativity that's coming out of the pandemic, right? I mean, I think, and that's a good segue, on the business side of things. And I also am getting a lot of questions, as I'm sure you are, about what we're seeing in the market, and as people are starting to think about opening up their businesses now, reopening up. Now, you're working on a very large restructuring case, and I think we're seeing a fair amount of activity on that side of the business around the world, although we expect a lot more of that. Do you want to comment? I mean, obviously there's some big things going on.
It's interesting. Yeah, it falls into 3 categories. So that there's a third of our clients where we're in crisis and we're in restructuring, and they're calling us, and that's where the part of our business where you have to react. Sometimes you have to travel, you have to do these things. Why do I do it? Is it I love what I do. I love what I do, and it's a passion. And these are the moments where you live for these moments in terms of, hey, I can help. I can make a difference in that. So That's part of it. As we talked about this before, as we come out of this, people are starting to think, I got to be more offensive. I got to take market share, because those that take share out of these types of cycles are the ones that are the dominant leaders of their industries or their market segments for the next 5 to 10 years. You've seen that over the cycles. So you have to be thinking that way. You have to be thinking, how can I? We're thinking that way. We're recruiting actively. We've had this week 20 senior recruits.
Wow.
In restructuring in Europe.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I've been doing that a lot too on the recruiting side. We're getting, I'm doing the outreach to folks that we want to hire and have targeted very selectively, but I'm also getting a lot of inbound interest, people reaching out unsolicited, kind of looking to get on our platform in various parts of the world. So yeah, I mean, I think, I'm always a believer when it comes to recruiting, we should not let the market terms or the market cycles dictate that. We are always hiring top performers regardless, because we take a long-term view. We're patient, privately held business, family-owned firm. We don't have to answer to anybody but ourselves. And when you do that, it's a nice luxury that we can be long-term and patient and make the right investments. But I think you said you touched on three things. I think you mentioned two. What was the third?
So the second one is they're playing offense, just like we're playing offense. The third one, which is really interesting, is we had this. I had a company that called and week and a half ago, Tony, we were the market share leader, the best operator in our segment pre-COVID. We were the best. This was our margins. This was our team. It was viewed by the market. And now that we've gone into this situation, our competitors that weren't as strong as we were are renegotiating their leases. They're going through restructuring processes. They're accessing government support that we're not. And because we were so healthy, we have money, we didn't need to do that. And yet what's going to happen in this whole process is we're going to find ourselves in last place.
Right.
Guys that were like so far behind us. So the first one's restructuring. So can you help us think through how can we begin to think of ourselves in crisis, even though that we're not? And how do we restructure? And we don't want to lose ground to these guys, because in 6 to 9 months, we will be in trouble. So you have 1/3 that are already in trouble, 1/3 that are trying to figure out how to get stronger and be the dominant player. And you got the other third that were maybe doing very well or doing well, that find themselves a little bit disoriented because a lot of people are doing lots of things. Yeah. And how can we make sure they stay ahead? So there's a lot going on. We have seen a tremendous pickup in activity across many of our markets. Maybe there's a couple of markets yet where the government really are still providing the open bar approach. Here, what drink do you want? Let me help you.
Right.
And
COVID cocktail.
That kind of delays things. But what's going to happen is the exit is way more challenging than being in. Yeah. Because when you have the government with the furloughs in U.S., or when you have the special dispensation to help you with the team, the payroll in Europe, so you have a little bit of protection insulation. You don't have revenues, but you don't have the costs. Right. You come out of COVID, well, guess what? The training wheels are gone. You don't get that support anymore. You're not going to get all that dispensation. Right. But the revenues haven't fully come back. So you have to now face the music and your business. It's
interesting on the M&A private equity side. Like I said, we're 7-8 weeks into this, and the first couple of weeks we were getting calls from the private equity sponsors. Hey, Paul, I don't have a new deal, but here's the help we need in our portfolio company, and we were helping them across the various portfolio companies. Now, I anticipate there'll probably be some more of that as we unwind. I mean, there was a lot of liquidity in the system pre-pandemic, which I think, 90 days or so will hold the companies over. But as we stay in this longer and the slower it takes to come out, there'll probably be more issues at the portfolio company level. But to your point, the calls we're getting now, and I was actually pretty encouraged over the last week or two around the world, whether it be in Europe, because I spoke to our teams in Europe, in Asia, in Brazil, in Latin America in particular, and even in the US, we've actually seen a small uptick in new projects coming in on the M&A side, whether they be buy side or sell side. And I think, again, there's a lot of liquidity that wants to be deployed. And you touched on this. I think during the financial crisis, people went back and looked and saw that most of the value creation that came out of the financial crisis were those that invested very early on upon kind of exit. So people are doing that now today with all this liquidity, and they want to get ahead of that. So we had a fair amount of M&A activity come in within the last week to 10 days. So it's very encouraging. Hopefully it continues. And then on the flip side, so we have a fair amount of our people working on that, but we also
you've done a great job with the cross training, though. You've done a fantastic job in taking this moment and getting your teams trained in other skills and capabilities. That's going to serve them when we get out of this.
Well, I think it serves first of all, about 2 years ago, we started cross training our people in transaction advisory. Not that we anticipated the COVID crisis, but we just knew we were getting long in an M&A cycle. And having done this through the financial crisis, I wanted to make sure our people were ready. And the people want it. They love, it's great doing M&A and financial due diligence, but there's more to life than that, and they want to become more well-rounded. So they love getting the cross-training in 13-week cash flows, bankruptcy, restructuring, crisis management, leadership. So we've trained all the people in that, and now we have a fair amount of those people redeployed. In the U.S., I think the most of our people are redeployed working in the oil and gas segment. As you know, in the U.S., that's gotten hit really all over tremendously. And we have a ton of restructuring work there, and a lot of transaction services folks are working as part of large teams in the oil and gas space right now. And I think as we see more of that activity throughout the world, more of our transaction services people will work on that while they also work on deals. We also have been putting people into corporate transformation projects, private equity operations projects, finance functions, stuff that we're capable to do. We have a couple TS partners working as interim CFOs in places and portfolio companies. So, again, you had mentioned about the creativity and whatnot. And I think we're trying to be creative with the people, and it serves the firm well, but it also serves the individuals well from a growth perspective, and it serves the clients well. So everyone's kind of it's a win across the board for everyone. And we're lucky as a firm, we have the flexibility to do that.
I think today too, it's easier now with these digital programs. And I think you had a great idea with the teacher, the in-office teacher that you can call.
Office hour.
That's great. And what better individual to do that? The terrific individual that Mike is. No, I think all those things are terrific.
We've been tracking the so we took a senior advisor who's a senior restructuring professional to transaction services. We put him in what we almost like professor office hours. And I think, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on a daily basis, you can make an appointment with him. If you're anyone in transaction services who's working on a non-transaction services project and you have questions on, basic stuff on restructuring or 13-week cash flow, he's a resource that you can make an appointment and call to get the help that you need. And it should be interesting. And other divisions, he's now doing something with tax. And other divisions are actually taking advantage of that, which is what we want to help. We've taken almost like an academic approach to it a little bit.
I think that's terrific. It's that cross training. As you know, I'm a big believer in the ability for people to jump from one area to the other, jump from one region to the other. I'm getting the opportunity to work with 15 professionals from the local region, and I'm learning from them, and I think they're learning from us. So it's great. And the same thing across our different offers where we work with, and I was just on the phone this morning with Guillaume over in Paris, and we're working on things together. And so, we've given, I'm going to be absent for a little while and on location here. I've created a executive task force in the French practice comprised of 4 individuals. So Guillaume, Nicola, Thomas, and CM. So delegated them with, hey, I'm kind of going to be a little bit absent for the next few months, and we don't have an office where I can get to come in and kibitz and figure out what you guys are doing once a week. So kind of on your own, this is what we want you guys to do, and we want you to kind of roll your sleeves and become the leader of this now. And they're stepping up. And they'll muddle through some pieces, but I love the fact that they're going to step up, and it's great leadership training for them. in terms of working across the different practices and coordinating. I told them, the way we're organized in A&M is your line of business is still the hard line. So Paul is still the individual overseeing and will direct you from a tag perspective, from a transaction advisory perspective, but we have to work together as an office. And what we hate to see is these silos, and we want to break those silos down. It's not what we're about. So we want you to work across and go to market with the best people. Always decide to go to market, never alone, and with the best people.
Because wherever they reside in the firm.
Problems are much more complicated and interrelated than your own area. And just to recruit people that enjoy approaching it that way. And we're more successful that way. Part of our success, part of this success is the fact that we're not just a siloed approach. And you see that with many of our competitors. And I think that's a strength. So it's great to see the guys step up. So
and they love it too. This is what people want,
Check for Guillaume. Yeah.
But I think, I said this earlier on, we have our weekly global leadership calls, which have all the folks on it from the various business units and geographies, and how quickly and well we've come together on an integrated basis. But I think personally, my opinion is that our firm will come out of this probably much stronger internally, given how we've all worked together in a time of crisis to manage through this, not just for the firm, but for our clients, like what you're doing, what you just mentioned in Paris. That's happening in a smaller scale all over the firm that I see and that I'm dealing with. And to have that ability, with 60 offices around the world at A&M, to have people know and work to each, there's nothing like a crisis to kind of bring people together. And we're seeing that. And I think when we get on the other side of this, the benefits and the relationships and some of the best practices that just kind of fell out of this, weekly calls like this we've never done globally, I think should continue. And I think as a firm we'll benefit and be much stronger and be able to serve the clients better. Because again, like you said, the clients don't care where people reside, and we shouldn't be looking in certain countries or regions or business units on a limited basis to serve these people. Just bring the best resources wherever they reside in the firm or in the geography, in the business unit or in the geography. And we're doing that now. So it's I think it's going to, this could be a long-term, very positive situation for our firm.
I think you say that. So we set up these biweekly calls amongst the managing directors of all Europe. And initially, before this, we would struggle to get attendance because people would be busy. I'm on a case. I don't have time for this. Now it's like perfect attendance. Everybody doesn't miss. And as people start to get busy again, as the businesses has really started to pick up, I said, let's do this every month. Let's not do this as frequently. We can now kind of ease off. People feel more connected. No, Tony, we kind of want to keep doing this way. We're getting a lot of value out of this. People really look forward to this, half hour or 45-minute call. It's not so heavy. Right. And the content is improved. I mean, the ability to deliver good content share has dramatically, and we're definitely catching up. So it's been great to see that it's instead of you telling them, hey, let's do this, they're like, hey, we want to do this. We want to come together. And that's
I just think also, we've been very big on, I'm a big believer, and I know you are too, on transparency. And, I've gotten to a point, in times of crisis like this, you can't over communicate, right? So, we've been doing, global partner calls, regional partner calls, weekly staff call. I've gotten to a point between everything we're sending out, I get on these calls, they're quick because there's nothing left to discuss. But that's where you want to be. Everybody should know everything. And we're trying to make sure that happens. And I've been, and we have this great decentralized firm, right? And we can rapidly disseminate information on a decentralized basis.
That's another great point you say is in the past, when we were not in a crisis mode in terms of the health crisis, you get on some of these calls and it's an opportunity for you to try to, express yourself. And now there isn't any posturing. It's just, hey, what are the facts? This is what you got to know. It's just more efficient. Right. We're operating more efficiently. And it's also, check it at the door. Let's just, what do you got to add? Right. What's the real conversation here? So it's been great.
But I feel
So
like, when you get on these calls, and, we've ended a couple of these calls 10 minutes early, right? And when
yeah,
does that ever happen? So I feel like, at least we're getting as much information out there as possible. We're going to be sending out those surveys. I know you've done one in ECPR in
mhm,
Europe, but now we're going to do one for the entire firm because we want to make sure that everyone feels, basically, how are we managing the business? Are you getting the information you need to be successful? What could we do better? So those, I know HR is going to be sending that out globally. And I think we took the one that you did first, and that's going out, I know, in transaction advisory, I think this week, but for the rest of the firm. So we'll have that feedback. And I think it's odd, I don't know how many firms would do an employee survey during kind of a bad time, right? But that's when you really want the feedback. Like, how are we doing here? And that's when you want to make sure the people are the most taken care of. So I think it's great to get that feedback. I mean, hey, when times are good, you send out a survey, everything comes back great. Well, great. What are you going to do with that, right? This is the time to get the real candid feedback from the people. Now, listen, our people aren't shy, and I'm sure, like you, I get plenty of direct messages, but, maybe there's some people who want to participate in a short 10-minute survey monkey type of thing. And it'll be great to get that feedback now as well.
So let me ask you this. So I got some good feedback on the repositioning or I wouldn't call it rebranding, but messaging that we've been working on over the last 6 really 12 months on leadership action results. Now it's kind of launched, and we were planning to do that well before the crisis happened. So this was just the timing. So the timing had hit so that we got launched during the crisis. And I think people thought that it had something to do with it. It actually had nothing to do with it. But I've gotten some good feedback on that. It's like, yeah, that's what you guys really stand for. Have you had any feedback at all on your end from?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone, it was kind of a no-brainer when we discussed it. And again, I'm always a big believer in having a differentiated approach, right? Answering the why. Why would somebody use Alvarez and Marsal versus another firm? And, when you look at leadership action results, I think it really sums it up. From when the firm was founded in 1983, that's what the premise was. And that tone is set from the top, from your father and Brian, and then it's set at the next level from people like me, you, Nick, and others. And then I think everyone else kind of, just falls into that cadence. But when people say, well, how are you different? Oh, that's just a slogan. Well, no, look at you right now, right? And I think those are the things you point to. And, I say things, well, how is your firm different? Well, we have the best people. Well, everyone says they have the best people. Yeah, but look at our people. They've been cross-trained in this, and they've actually done this, and they've done this and this. So when they go work with you as a client, they're coming from a different perspective. They're much more well-rounded. They take more of a holistic approach. I mean, we've been saying we want our people to be relationship-driven, trusted advisors. That is the mantra, and that's where I think we're really differentiating ourselves. And this firm allows that. Now, listen, I'm the first to say, I think A&M is a great firm. It's perfect for someone like me. I don't think A&M is a firm that everyone should work at, though. I think for the right type of individual, entrepreneurial spirit, fire in the belly, self-motivated, A-team player, that's there's no better place than our firm. But it's not easy what we do, and you're Exhibit A of that right now. I mean, not everybody would do what you and your team are doing right now, and that's okay. It's just you're maybe not the right person for Alvarez and Marsal. And luckily, we have 5,000 people who are the right people for Alvarez and Marsal right now around the world.
Which if we didn't have those team members, we wouldn't be able to do our job. So I want to tip my hat off to my team for joining me here and all the teams, and my assistant. And then before we break, because I've got to go back to my day job. So through all this stuff, as I was preparing to fly out and handle all the logistics, and my assistant was actually working between 11 and 1 a.m. So Asha was working, making sure my logistics was right, 11 to 1 a.m. And she had it all set up. And she calls me at 4 in the morning. She messages me at 4 in the morning. I'm in the hospital. My son's had an emergency. I'm worried about, I said, don't worry about my logistics. I'll handle my own logistics from here on in. You just I'm worried about you. You better text me every 2 hours to figure out what's. Thankfully, her son's fine, so it all worked out. But that level of commitment, the emergency that happened, our reaction, and I messaged like 10 people, and they messaged like 10 people, and then 100 people were giving her messages of like, how you doing, and she she just wrote me after I left, and she said, like, it was an outpouring of support, and that you don't appreciate how important that was for me. She said, in going through what I was going through, I told her, get out of the hospital as quickly as possible, because that's where you can pick up. So let's get the tests that are going, get this, get that, and thankfully it went through, and we didn't have to move her to a different place and whatnot, and it was just an ear issue, and her son was okay. But those are that's when you got to stop everything and drop, right, and just focus.
Well, I think that's a good kind of point to take away from this, is that, listen, this is first and foremost a health crisis, right? And what we're doing at Alvarez Marsal, it's important, but we're not saving lives, right? And I think those are the type of things that go, first priority is the health and safety of our people and everybody around that. And that's where, the people on those front lines, you really take your hat off to. And then I think when it comes to us and our people at our firm, which is clearly second priority to the health aspect, I just think, I'm continually impressed by the quality of our people, by the quality of our leaders in the various parts of the firm, and just how everybody came together during this period of time to look after each other and look after the clients. The simple questions, just how can I help? I'm curious to see, and maybe on our next discussion, we'll have some results on the surveys. I know the surveys you did in Europe were very, very positive from the people. They feel engaged, they feel that they're being taken care of, and they're treated as if they're important, and we care about their health and safety, of course. But I think, it helps you put it in perspective. We're doing some great things here at A&M, but the health and safety of the people is the most important aspect.
How you doing? You good? Your family's good, and you guys, the girls are good.
They can't wait for me to start traveling again. They're not used to all this time being around.
Not mine. Mine was like, we're loving it. We're loving that you're home. And I said, I'm loving being home, and I would be home. I'll be home soon enough. So I just got.
I've been married almost 23 years, but in actual time together, it's probably half that, because I'm always traveling.
This was the most we've been together, and at a contrary time, and the kids didn't appreciate that I left, right? So we're on Skype or they're on video and Zoom, and they're like, Pop, where are you? Like, what are you doing? Come back. Are they
Skyping you for popcorn?
Yeah, exactly. Paul,
right,
good to see
you. Be safe over there, okay?